The Brough of Birsay is a small tidal island off mainland Orkney's northwestern coast. It's also a beautiful spot to enjoy the wild flowers and spot puffins in the early summer. There is a walkable causeway to reach it, and it can trace its human history back to the Pictish era, although may have been inhabited long before this, as a late Neolithic mace head was discovered on the island. The name comes from the Old Norse, borg, meaning fortress, and Birsay, meaning island or promontory accessed only by a narrow strip of land, as it's believed it may have been connected to the mainland by a natural land bridge. Traces of a 6th century Christian monastic building was discovered under the remains of a Norse settlement, along with oval Pictish houses dating from the 7th and 8th centuries. Above ground, only the well survives from that time. A Pictish stone also once stood proudly on the island, with fragments of it being discovered. To the north, west and south of the old churchyard, more evidence of Pictish settlement remains were found. There is also some evidence of the kind of work carried out by the Picts, such as metalworking, including fine bronze jewellery that would have adorned the necks of high-status people. The Pictish slab, possibly dating from the 8th century with a carving consisting of 3 warriors, a mythical animal and an eagle, as well as a Celtic cross, was discovered in 1935, and the fragment was sold to the National Museum of Scotland. One of the warriors wears a fringed cloak and has curled hair, so is possibly a leader or king. It was found outside the kirkyard we see today in pieces, possibly destroyed by later settlers on the island. A copy of it stands on the island, including a crescent and V-rod and a swimming elephant. It's unknown what happened to the Picts, but by the 800s, the island was in the hands of the Norsemen, and it rose to prominence under Norwegian rule. It became the centre of Orcadian power before Kirkwall became the seat of power of the Earls of Orkney. It was mentioned in the Orkneyinga saga, with reference to Errol Thoren the Mighty, grandson of Malcolm II, who had his residence at Birsay, where he built and dedicated to Christ a fine minster, the episcopal seat of the first Bishop of Orkney. However, it's unclear whether it meant on the island or the village on the mainland. Thorfinn, described as tall, strong, with black hair, a large nose, and rather ugly, but skilled in the art of war, and of dauntless courage, died in 1065. The remains of the small church is certainly one of the most significant old structures on the island, with its Romanesque design, dating from the 12th century. It was dedicated to St. Peter. Inside the ruins is a stone bench that runs along the walls for the local congregation to sit on during sermons, and a semicircular apse houses the altar made of red sandstone, which was reconstructed in the 1930s. 3 Norse runic inscriptions were discovered within the church. Several other buildings were constructed later near the church, the latest of which may have been built around the 15th century. By the 1620s, the church and its graveyard were no longer in use. By 1795, at the time of the statistical account, the church was much neglected, and by 1921, the church walls were as we see them today. It's possible there was a square tower built at its west end, and the windows were glazed. To the north of this are remains of buildings, which are thought to have been houses dating from the 900s and built by the Vikings. Some of these were substantial in size, a reflection of the wealth on the island. There are the remains of a number of hall houses, and there is evidence of a heating system in the hall and drainage systems, as well as the possible remains of a steam room or sauna. Hundreds of pebbles were discovered here by archaeologists on the floor, which would have been heated in a brazier then doused in water, creating the steam, and giving credence to this suggestion. It's thought to have belonged to whoever owned the large house opposite. There is also evidence of a blacksmith's workshop and a barn. These structures are some of the best preserved Viking houses in the Norse world, but are not typical, which makes them more intriguing. Several excavations have been undertaken at the site since the 19th century, with Sir Henry Dryden carrying out the first small-scale one in 1866. In 1934, the site was taken into state care, and excavation and restoration got underway, although this stopped in 1939 at the outbreak of World War II. They recommenced in the mid-1950s to early 1960s, with further excavations taking place during the 1970s until 1982. The other building of note on the island is the Lighthouse on the other side. It was built in 1925 by David Allen Stevenson and is still guiding ships today. For many years beforehand, fishing boats and vessels had run ashore there. However, on Friday, 24th May 2002, Captain Tony Taylor, the pilot of a helicopter which was carrying a load of solar equipment to the lighthouse, died when it crashed into the sea nearby. The Brough of Birsay is in the care of Historic Environment Scotland and is a scheduled monument. Before visiting, it's advisable to check the tide tables. If you enjoyed this episode of Scotland's History, please like, comment and subscribe. Until next time, thank you for watching.